One.
Hello, friends. Welcome to my Christmas stories.
Tonight we will be reading The Snow Queen.
Hmm.
This is a story about a little boy called Kay and his friend Gerda. But the tale really begins with a magician with a magic mirror. This mirror would shrink everything that was good and beautiful into almost nothing, while ugly and unpleasant things were increased in size so that they looked even worse than they did before. Now, one day, his assistants took the mirror and flew with it into the sky. Somehow, they let it slip from their hands, and it fell down to earth and shattered into 1,000 pieces. Several of these little pieces of mirror flew straight into people's eyes, making everything they looked at seem twisted. But the worst thing of all was when a little splinter of the mirror flew into someone's heart. Immediately the heart would become as cold and hard as ice. This is what happened to the little boy Kay, as you shall hear. Kay and Gerda lived next door to one another. In the summer, they would play together or sit under two little stools in the bright sunshine, laughing and chatting among the roses that grew everywhere. In the winter, when it was too cold to go outside, they would sit at the window and smile at each other through the frosted glass where they had melted a little hole. One night, when Kay was looking out the window, he saw a huge snowflake drift down to a snow-filled flower pot. The flake grew larger and larger until at last it took on the shape of a beautiful lady dressed in white.
What?
Her ice cold eyes gleamed like stars, and her gown glittered with frost. She was very beautiful. She beckoned to Kay, but he backed away frightened. By the time spring came around again, Kay had forgotten all about the Snow Queen. He played with Gerda in the springtime and in the warm summer days that followed. They could not have been happier.
Yay!
Then one day,
Oh.
as they were both sitting under the shade of a tree, Kay suddenly cried out, "There's something in my eye, and oh, I have such a pain around my heart."
Oh no.
He did not know it, but two splinters from the magic mirror had flown into his eye and pierced his heart. "Oh, what's the matter?" cried Gerda. "You look so pale and strange. Are you hurt?" Kay looked at his friend with ice cold eyes. "Oh, don't fuss," he snapped. "I'm all right. It's just that looks terribly ugly." Poor Gerda. Kay had never spoken to her like this before. And as the summer wore on, the magic mirror's evil power took hold of him. Kay became a different boy. Gone was the kind and caring friend Gerda had known. Kay laughed at people and mimicked them, not caring if he upset them or not. And most of all, he laughed at Gerda. When winter arrived, Kay longed to go out into the snow. He dressed up warmly, took his sledge, and called out to Gerda, "I'm off to the village square. The other birds are going sledging. Can I come too?" "No, of course you can't. You're only a silly little girl." When Kay arrived in the square, he found the other boys tying their sledges to the farmer's carts and gliding along in the snow behind them. What fun, thought Kay, when a tall, white-cloaked figure drew up in a big, white sledge. Kay tied his little sledge to the big one. Off they went through the snowy streets of the town. Very soon they had passed through the city gates and sped onwards toward the forest. The snow began to fall very thickly, and the star-shaped snowflakes grew bigger and bigger. At first, Kay was excited, but very soon he wanted to go home. With frozen fingers, he tried to unhitch his little sledge from the big one, but he could not manage it. Very frightened, he cried out. The big sledge stopped, and the white-clad figure turned around to look at him. It was the Snow Queen, the beautiful lady he had seen in the winter before. Poor little boy, she said to him. Come up beside me, and I'll wrap you in my fur rug to keep you warm. Kay climbed up, and the Snow Queen put her arm around him. He began to feel sleepy.
I have a feeling this wasn't the Snow Queen.
I must go back to grandmother, he thought, but the Snow Queen gave him an ice-cold kiss. And the little boy's heart, already cold with the splinter from the magic mirror, felt icier still. But soon he began to get used to the cold. He felt better, and all thoughts of home, grandmother, and his friend Gerda faded. He saw only the beautiful Snow Queen with her white, fur-lined cloak and the glittering snowflakes clinging to her dress. And so they glided onwards through the dark night, through the forest where wolves howled, and across snow-spangled plains. Very soon Kay drifted off to sleep, with the Snow Queen's arms around him. Back at home, Gerda was trying to find out what happened to Kay. The boys told her he had driven off at the back of a big white sledge, but no one knew the rider. And though she and Kay's grandmother searched for him all through the winter, they did not find him. Everyone now thought that Kay was dead, but Gerda did not believe it. When spring came around once again, she set off to look for him. First she went to the river. Had it carried Kay off downstream? She stepped into a little boat, which gently floated away, carrying Gerda with it. She drifted downstream, past green fields where sheep grazed, until at last she caught sight of a little cottage with a garden full of roses. Gerda's eyes filled with tears, for she could not help remembering the roses that grew back at home in the garden where she and Kay used to play on summer evenings. Perhaps someone is at home, thought Gerda. I am so hungry, she called out, and immediately the cottage door opened. An old lady bent with age and carrying a stick came out. She was wearing a beautiful large hat with flowers on it. She reached out over the river with her stick and pulled Gerda to the bank. What are you doing here, little girl? The old lady asked. And Gerda told her all about her quest to find Kay. Has he passed this way? She asked, and the old lady shook her head. Not yet, she said, but why not come in and rest before you continue your journey? You can see how pretty it is here, and my little cottage is very comfortable. It's lovely, said Gerda. It reminds me so much of the garden at home and of Kay. The old lady took Gerda by the hand, and they went inside. It was a beautiful cottage. The sunlight streamed through the windows onto a big bowl of cherries on the table. Help yourself, said the old lady. Gerda sat down, and the old lady combed the little girl's hair. I have always longed for a child like this, the old lady sighed to herself. I would like her to live with me. The old lady was a witch. And as she combed Gerda's hair, she wove a spell to make her forget all about her journey to find Kay. However, she knew that if Gerda saw the roses in the garden again, she would remember everything. The witch went out into the garden and waved her stick over the rose bushes. They immediately sank down under the soil, and no one could tell that they had ever grown there. In their place, the witch put every other type of beautiful flower. For a while, Gerda played happily in the garden. When she was tired, the old lady tucked her into a little bed with silk sheets. Gerda slept soundly until the morning, with not a thought of Kay in her mind at all. The next day, she was again out in the garden. Every now and again, she stopped and frowned. There was something not quite right. Something was missing. Then Gerda caught sight of the old lady's hat. It had roses on it. I know, she cried. There were roses, but where have they gone? Gerda was very sad that the roses had disappeared, and she began to cry. Her tears fell on a spot where a rose bush had grown. The little bush sprang up and flowered in front of her eyes. Immediately she remembered everything. She could not stay with the old woman a minute longer. She must continue looking for Kay. Have you seen him? She asked the rosebush. But it told her that deep down in the earth there was no sign of her little friend. He's not dead then, she said, and she ran around the garden, asking each flower if they knew anything about what had happened to Kay. But though each flower told her a magical story, not one could tell her where Kay would be found. I must go now, thought Gerda, before the old lady can keep me a minute longer. And she ran quickly out of the garden and away from the cottage. She walked on for a long time. She noticed that the weather was turning colder and colder, and that snow was beginning to fall.
What?
Suddenly she caught sight of a raven sitting on the bare branch of a tree. Have you seen my friend Kay? She asked. Has a little boy passed this way? It is possible that I have seen him, replied the raven. But I have bad news for you.
Huh?
I think he has left you for a princess. A princess? This princess, said the raven, is well known for her cleverness and wit. Since she needed someone who was equally clever to talk with her, young men from all over the kingdom come to her palace. Though they seemed lively and handsome enough, not one of them was as clever as the princess. Until one day a boy arrived at her palace. He had long blonde hair, but wore the clothes of a peasant. That sounds just like Kay, cried Gerda in excitement. Anyway, went on the raven, this boy came to the princess. He was so handsome, clever, and lively that the princess fell for him at once. And he liked her too, believe me, this is all true, for I have a raven friend within the palace who has told me all about it. Oh, this is certainly Kay, cried Gerda. You must let me into the palace to see him. Once he knows I am here, he will come immediately. I will certainly take you there, said the raven, and my friend from the palace will lead you to your friend by a back staircase. For no one will let you in at the main entrance, because you look so shabby. Gerda followed behind the raven, who flapped and fluttered his way to the palace and through the grounds. His raven friend had left the back door open for them, and in they went. Oh, how I long to see him at last, thought Gerda. How pleased he will be that I've come so far to find him. How he will long to be home with me once again and see the rose trees and his dear grandmother. They went along a corridor and up a grand staircase. Gerda gasped with wonder at all the grand rooms they passed through. At last they came to the princess's own room, and Gerda saw a young man standing at the window with the princess. Kay, she cried and ran forward. The young man turned, but it was not Kay at all. Gerda burst into tears because she was so unhappy. She told the princess all that had happened to her, and how the raven had helped her find Kay. But we were wrong, she sobbed. He isn't here at all. The princess smiled kindly at her. Stay here in the palace for the night and rest, she said. In the morning we will give you a carriage and fresh clothes. You will feel so much better then. Gerda slept soundly that night, and her dreams were pleasant ones. In the morning she found a dress of silk and a cloak of velvet laid out for her, and a little white fur muff to keep her hands warm. The princess accompanied her to the palace entrance, and a golden coach drew up for her. Good luck, said the princess, as the coach drove off. Thank you for everything, said Gerda. And thank you too, dear raven, for all your kindness. I will fly behind the coach for the first part of your journey, he said. and he fluttered along beside the coach for many miles. The coach drove through a dark forest, but alas, it was seen by a band of robbers who saw it gleaming through the trees.
That doesn't sound fun.
They pushed the coachman to the ground and seized hold of Gerda. "Shall I kill her?" said one of the robbers. But her little daughter, who had come with her on the raid, clutched hold of her arm. "No, mother," she said. "I want a playmate. Let this little girl stay with me to be my friend." And because the little robber girl was so spoiled, her mother spared Gerda's life and let the two girls travel back to the robber camp in the golden coach. As they went along, Gerda told the robber girl all about her search for Kay and the adventures she had along the way. "Well, now the adventures are over," said the robber girl. "I want you to stay with me and be my friend. I will show you my pets. You'll see what a wonderful time we'll have together." But when Gerda arrived at the robber camp, she found that the robber girl's pets were a poor old reindeer who was chained to the wall all day, and 100 pigeons which she kept imprisoned in one room. The robber girl teased them terribly and waved a dagger at the reindeer's throat. "I have a dagger with me always," she boasted. "I even sleep with it." And she pulled Gerda down on a straw mattress and put one arm around her neck. The other held the dagger. There was no way Gerda could escape. It was a terrible night, and Gerda slept very badly. But as she lay awake during the long hours, she heard a pigeon cooing at her.
What?
"We have seen your Kay," it said. "He passed through our forest with the Snow Queen." "The Snow Queen?" cried Gerda. "Where will I find her? Where does she live?" "Why not ask the reindeer over there? He'll know." The reindeer told Gerda that the Snow Queen was probably in Lapland, where she stayed for the summer. In winter, she traveled off to an island near the North Pole. Gerda cried out when she heard how far away Kay had been taken, and the robber girl woke up. "Keep quiet, or I'll stab you with my dagger," she threatened. In the morning, though, the robber girl was in a better mood. She had grown fond of Gerda and did not like to see her so sad. "I will help you find Kay," she said. "My reindeer will take you to Lapland, to the castle of the Snow Queen." The reindeer's eyes shone at the thought of his own freedom, and Gerda could scarcely believe that the robber girl was letting her go. "You will need warm clothes," said the robber girl. "Take my mother's gloves. They are far too big for you, but they will cover your arms." After giving Gerda food and drink for the journey, the robber girl waved goodbye. Gerda saw her standing by the door with two huge guard dogs at her side, and her dagger gleaming in the sunlight. The reindeer and Gerda sped away over the countryside, through forests and plains, until at last Gerda saw some wonderful bright lights in the sky. "Those are the northern lights," explained the reindeer. "We have nearly reached Lapland." Once on the journey, they journeyed until the last they stopped for shelter at a little hut where an old Lapp woman gave them food. When Gerda had told her the story, the old woman sighed. "You poor thing," she exclaimed. "You still have over 100 miles to travel to the land of the Snow Queen. But I can help you a little. I will write a note to a wise woman I know there who should be able to help you further." Gerda took the note, and they set off once again. The beautiful northern lights shone all around them as they came nearer and nearer to the end of their journey. And so they arrived at the wise woman's house. The wise woman read the note 3 times, and then she said, "Young Kay is indeed with the Snow Queen, but he has no wish to escape. He likes living there, but that is because he has a splinter of ice in his heart. He is not the Kay, you know. The Snow Queen has complete power over him until the splinter of ice is removed from his heart. Can't you help little Gerda to rescue her friend? Asked the reindeer. But the wise woman shook her head. Gerda has all the power she needs already. Do you not see how she has been helped on her journey? That is because she has a kind and innocent heart. That alone should give her enough power to free her friend. Where do we go now? Asked the reindeer. You must take Gerda to the Snow Queen's garden and leave her there. Then return immediately to me. The garden where Gerda was left by the reindeer was icy cold and covered with snow. Her feet and hands were frozen, but she ran on bravely towards the palace. A flurry of snowflakes came rushing towards her. They grew bigger and bigger until she saw that they were not snowflakes at all. They were the Snow Queen's guards. Not men, but bears and snakes and porcupines, all glistening white like the snow. Just as poor Gerda felt she would die of cold, she suddenly found herself surrounded by a great crowd of little bright angels with spears in their hands. They struck at the Snow Queen's guards until they shattered into 1,000 snowflakes. Gerda felt cold no longer. A warm glow filled her as she walked onto the palace with the angels to protect her. Meanwhile, in the palace, Kay was playing with icicles. He often spelled whole words with them. The Snow Queen had once said to him, "When you can form the word eternity, then you shall be free." But he never could. Although he was blue with the cold, he felt nothing. He was frozen through with the Snow Queen's enchantment and with the splinters from the magic mirror. The Snow Queen had flown away that very day to touch the mountains with snow and had left Kay alone in her big hall of ice. This was where Gerda found him. "Kay!" she cried in delight, running towards him. "Kay, it's your friend Gerda. Oh, I have journeyed so far and so long to find you." But Kay took no notice of her at all. He stared into space with his ice-cold eyes without speaking. Then Gerda burst into tears at his unkindness. She cried so sadly and with so much feeling that the ice around Kay's heart began to melt, and he too burst into tears. A warm tear floated in his eyes, and the icy splinter that had caused all the trouble so long ago melted too.
Yay!
The two friends hugged and kissed each other, and Kay's blue cheeks became fresh and glowing once more. "Before I can be free, I must do something," said Kay. "I must spell the word eternity with these icicles." "I will help you," said Gerda, and together they formed the one word that gave Kay his freedom. Hand in hand, they ran through the frozen palace and out into the garden where the reindeer was waiting for them. What a journey that was! They journeyed southwards, visited the wise woman, and afterwards said goodbye to the reindeer at the home of the Lapp woman. As they wondered how they could get home without him, a horse and carriage came towards them. Gerda recognized it at once. It was the golden coach that had been given her by the princess, and inside was her friend, the robber girl. Gerda greeted her as an old friend and asked her for news of everything that had happened since she left the camp. "Your princess has gone traveling," said the robber girl, "and your friend Raven is dead." Gerda cried a little then, for the bird had been very kind to her. "I will take you as far as the city," said the robber girl, "but then I must leave you, for I intend to travel around the world." "No more traveling for me," said Kay. Never again did he want to visit the northern lands or the Snow Queen. When the robber girl had dropped them off at the edge of the city, they walked hand in hand through the gates. Summer had arrived. The flowers blossomed in the gardens, and the birds sang. And so Kay and Gerda came home again. Hardly believing her eyes, Kay's grandmother cried with joy as they came into the room. The scent of roses drifted through the window as the sun shone brightly on the happy group. And Kay forgot forever the icy kingdom of the Snow Queen, where he had lived for so long. Thank you so much for watching us, and please subscribe and tune back in for other story times.